Welcome, 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 everyone, to Wellness Wednesday and week 4 of the Feds in Motion Challenge. I am Robin Keogh, Executive Director of the Federal Employee Education and Assistance Fund, more commonly known as FEA. The challenge is FEA's annual event promoting health and wellness and supporting our mission to empower federal and postal employees and their families to achieve their educational, financial, and career goals as they serve the American people. We are so glad you're joining us for this event, and we are so grateful for your support of the physical, mental, and financial health of federal families. Each week of the challenge, Wellness Wednesdays give us a chance to delve more deeply into different aspects of wellness with experts who work, teach, and coach in the fields we're exploring. Today's session, Be Kind to Your Mind, is brought to you by GIBA, Government Employees Benefit Association. We are delighted to be welcoming GIBA back as a gold sponsor and thank them for their ongoing support of FEA and federal employees. In fact, GIBA has been supporting this event since it was a local 5K in the DC area, and they've stuck with us as we expanded to an all-virtual challenge with participants across the country and around the world. So thanks for sticking by us, GIBA. To say a few words and introduce our presenter, it's now my pleasure to introduce Shelley Giuliano, GIBA's Senior Director, Communications and Program Management. Shelley?
Thank you, Robin. Yes, I am Shelley Giuliano. I have been with GIBA for about 15 years, managing a number of different programs, and included in that is our sponsorship. We are very proud to continue to work with FEA on this and other activities that they do. GIBA is a not-for-profit membership association, and it was created and founded by NSA employees in 1957 to provide supplemental benefits not offered to federal government. And today we've grown to offer a variety of insurance benefits, discounts, and financial and retirement planning services to the entire federal government, retirees, military, and then sponsored family members. Today, I am very excited to introduce Dr. Bluth, a faculty member at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where her research focuses on the roles that self-compassion and mindfulness play in promoting well-being in youth. As a mindfulness practitioner for almost 40 years, a mindfulness teacher, and a lifelong educator with 18 years of classroom experience, she is also co-creator of the curriculum, Making Friends with Yourself, a mindful self-compassion program for teens, and author of the book, The Self-Compassion Workbook for Teens, Mindfulness and Compassion Skills to Overcome Self-Criticism and Embrace Who You Are.
Thank you for having me here. I am so happy to be here and talk about mindfulness and self-compassion, a healthy response to a challenging world. As all of us know, we're in this challenging world right now, and all of us can use coping skills and resilience skills that can really help. So I'm going to be talking about mindfulness and self-compassion, two different but related ways of being with ourselves and supporting ourselves when things are challenging, when life is challenging. So I'd like to start with a little practice. This will be short, just about a minute or two, to allow us to settle in. I imagine maybe you've been running around today a little bit, and this will give you a chance to just settle. So if you can find a place where you're sitting on a chair or at a desk or wherever, and if you're comfortable closing your eyes, you can close your eyes. Certainly don't have to. And take a couple of deep breaths, allowing yourself to relax a little bit more with each out breath. As you breathe out, imagining you're letting go of any stress or tension that's in your body right now. And with each out breath, allowing yourself to settle a little bit more, allowing this chair that you're sitting on to support you. Maybe checking with your shoulders and making sure your shoulders are relaxed and away from your ears. Your lower jaw is relaxed and soft. And that your belly is relaxed and soft. And we'll just take a few more breaths. Again, imagining or letting go of any stress remaining in your body with each out breath. And whenever you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, you can gently open your eyes and come back onto the call. So, what I'm going to be talking about in this session is first about mindfulness, what it is, offering a definition. I'm going to be talking just a very little bit about the research on mindfulness. We have decades of research now on mindfulness, and I'll be offering a mindfulness practice that you can have and to take away with, to use when you need it. I'm also going to be talking about self-compassion and offering a definition of self-compassion, and also just a little bit about the self-compassion research and a couple of practices. Okay, so first of all, definition of mindfulness. So I imagine many of you have heard about mindfulness now, or maybe you're even mindfulness practitioners. This is the most well-accepted definition of mindfulness, the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So you can see that there are really two different parts of this definition. One is paying attention, bringing awareness to what's happening in each moment, which often we don't do. We drive from place to place, for example, and we get to wherever we're going, and we might realize, I had no awareness of the whole time I was driving. I was kind of on automatic pilot. This often happens, right? So mindfulness, this aspect of mindfulness is about paying attention and really noticing what's coming up for us in each moment. And that's either physical sensations, emotions, or thoughts. And doing this in a way that's non-judgmental. Okay, so what do I mean by this? And I really like this comic. I want to learn to live in the moment, just not this moment, some other moment, like a moment on the beach, right? So this is funny, but so often we this is how we approach our lives, and um, we approach it with, if only things were a little bit different, then I would be happy. Now, I want to put out there that obviously right now we're in exceptional times, which are extraordinarily difficult, right? And this doesn't mean that we shouldn't change the things that are out there, and we shouldn't take steps and be active in making changes that need to be made. But what it means is that in the moment, when we're experiencing something difficult or something hard, recognizing that this is what's here right now and we can't change it. So classic example of this is you're stuck in traffic, right? You can't do anything about it. There's no point in adding a layer of what's already uncomfortable and frustrating, adding this extra layer of, oh, I wish it weren't this way. I wish this weren't so, because you can't do anything about it. Maybe at a later point, you can write to your your representative and talk about how there shouldn't be construction for years and years and years on this highway or whatever. But in the moment when these difficult emotions occur, recognizing that this is what's here right now and recognizing that in the moment we can't change it. Much of our discomfort, much of our discontent, and much of our unhappiness comes from wanting things to be different than they are. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be different than they are. Certainly something should, but what it does mean is that this is the cause of our unhappiness frequently. So we actually have a choice. This is a quote from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. So we always have the choice of how we're going to respond to a given situation. The situation is difficult enough, right? And that's causing us a lot of discomfort and dis-ease. We don't need to add that extra layer of, oh, I wish it weren't this way. Okay? So we do have the power to choose how we're going to respond. So what mindfulness is about is slowing down and pausing, and then choosing how we're going to respond in any given situation. We can't do that unless we slow down and notice what we're experiencing. So this takes us to our first practice, and this practice is called Palm of the Hand. This practice is obviously portable because you have your hand with you at all times. I was going to say this is a handy practice, but I'll skip that. Okay, so what this practice is about is noticing what's here. So what you're going to do is just take out your hand, and with your one finger of your other hand, just going up and down your fingers. Okay, and you're bringing your attention and your awareness to the place where this finger from your other hand touches your palm. Okay, and just noticing that, that place of contact where your finger touches your palm and noticing what that feels like. For some people, you notice a little bit of like a tickling sensation. Does it feel cool or warm? You might notice your mind wandering a little bit. If you notice your mind wandering, just bring your attention back to noticing that sensation of your finger on the palm of your hand. You might want to make little circles on the palm. See if it's any different when you stretch your palm out as far as you can. Again, bringing our attention to that place of contact. And does it feel any different if you just allow your palm to relax? And even cup your palm. Okay, so just noticing what you're feeling, noticing the sensation, and then stopping. Okay, just a little tickly. You can take a moment and scratch your hand. And you may have noticed that when you were doing this, when you were actually focusing on the sensation of where your finger touches your palm, that you weren't worrying or thinking about the future. And the reason for this is that when you bring your attention to physical sensations in this way, that you're in the present moment. So we say that physical sensations are our portal to the present moment. It's where the present moment is. Physical sensations only happen in the present moment. So when we bring our attention to our physical sensations, we let go of thinking about the future, which is where anxiety and worry are. And we let go of dwelling in the past, where rumination is, right? Thinking about things like, oh, I wish that weren't, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I hadn't done that. Thinking about the future. Oh, what if this happens? Worrying about things. Um, so when we're here in the present moment, it allows our minds to let go of that worry and that rumination. Okay. So the more that we can stay in the present moment, the less that we're going to be in these states of worry, which we know, of course, don't help. Okay. So a little bit about the research on mindfulness-based interventions. And when we're talking about mindfulness-based interventions, we're talking about programs that teach people how to be more mindful, how to cultivate mindfulness. For those of you who don't know, meta-analyses are studies of studies when researchers bring together a number of different studies and statistically analyze them. So it's kind of the culmination of many different studies. So these are three different meta-analyses. The first one is with healthcare workers who were taught mindfulness. And what they saw among these healthcare workers were improvements in anxiety, burnout, stress, depression, psychological distress, job strain, and improvements also in empathy and well-being. Okay, and this was a recent study published last year. And then this was among medical personnel, healthy adults, clinical populations, as well as students in the second meta-analysis, the second bullet. And what they saw, they were looking particularly at anger and aggression, and they saw reductions in anger and aggression compared to the control groups. And in the third meta-analysis, they saw significant reductions in perceived stress, depression, anxiety, and fear of recurrence. And this was among breast cancer patients. Okay. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we have decades of research which show that mindfulness-based interventions are effective in improving our overall mental health and emotional well-being. Okay, so I'm going to shift a little bit now and talk about self-compassion, which is a close cousin to mindfulness in some ways. Well, self-compassion is based in mindfulness, but in order to talk about self-compassion, I'm going to have you do an exercise that will help elicit the definition of self-compassion. Okay, so this exercise is called How Would I Treat a Friend? And what I would like you to do is think about a time when you've had a close friend who was struggling in some way. Maybe they felt inadequate, they felt like they failed, they felt unworthy. Could be something that happened at work that made them feel this way. It could be something at home, something with their partner, with their kids. And they came to you. What did you say to them? And what tone of voice did you use? And I'm going to give you a minute or two to think about this. And what I'd like you to do now is think about a time when you were struggling in some way, when you felt inadequate, you felt like you failed, maybe you felt unworthy. Again, this could be something work related or not, it could be something at home, it could be, some way in which you felt like you had failed. What did you say to yourself and what tone of voice did you use? And again, I'll give you a minute or so to think about this. So 80% of us are kinder to our good friends than we are to ourselves. And in fact, we say things to ourselves that we would never in a million years say to our good friends. And so our definition of self-compassion then, or at least one definition of self-compassion, the informal definition of self-compassion, is in challenging times when things are difficult, treating yourself with the same care, with the same support, with the same kindness that you treat your good friends. And obviously, we know how to do it because we treat others that with kindness and support. So it's just about making a U-turn and treating yourself with that same kindness and the same support. There's a more formal definition of self-compassion, which involves these three different components. The first one is mindfulness. So self-compassion has a foundation of mindfulness because we need to know what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, in order to know how to support ourselves. The second component of self-compassion is common humanity. Common humanity is the understanding that whatever we're going through, whatever emotional difficulties, challenges that we're experiencing, like frustration, anger, loneliness, sadness, anxiety, despair, that this is part of the human experience, that we all at some time or another experience these difficult emotions. And yet, when we're going through it ourselves, we tend to forget. We tend to forget that everybody else has experienced it. We tend to isolate and think we're the only ones, right? The third component of self-compassion is self-kindness. And self-kindness is just, when we're having these difficult times, being kind and being supportive to ourselves. Again, we know how to do this. We do it for others all the time. It's just making that U-turn and being kind to ourselves rather than doing what we normally do, which is being self-critical and self-judgmental. So this is the more formal definition of self-compassion, which actually was defined by Krista Neff. I have to give her credit in 2003, and she's elaborated on it since then. So what do we know from the research on self-compassion is that that self-compassion is inversely correlated with depression, anxiety, and stress. And again, we see these in a number of different meta-analyses. So those are, again, summary of studies. So people who are less self-compassionate tend to be more anxious, tend to be more depressed, more stressed, and of course the reverse is true. If you're more self-compassionate, you have less depression, anxiety, and stress. By the way, this is true among not just adults, but adolescents as well. We have quite a bit of research on adolescents at this point. And this is another meta-analysis that brought together a number of studies with programs that were offered to cultivate self-compassion. These programs ranged in duration from 24 hours to 8-week-long programs. And what they found was that, and they compared these programs with control groups. So groups that were doing something else, and this is randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard of research. So these are pretty robust outcomes. What they found was that compared to a control group, those who participated in self-compassion programs had improvements in eating disorders, depression, rumination, which we know is closely linked with depression, anxiety, stress, self-criticism, and then, of course, mindfulness and self-compassion. So we know self-compassion is good for you. So I thought I'd offer now some comforting gestures. This is a practice that people find is very easy to do. We find that both adults and teens use these gestures regularly. I like to do a little explanation of what we're going to do before we do it. So first of all, when a friend is struggling, you would think nothing of giving them a hug or putting your arm around them or patting them on the back. We don't generally do those kinds of things for ourselves, right? We're just not in the habit. But what we know is that when we do that, when we give a friend a hug, it elicits a physiological response in both the friend and in ourselves. There's a release of a hormone called oxytocin, which is what we refer to as the feel-good hormone. It makes us feel good, makes the other person feel good. So there's actually something physiological that happens. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for the moment so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to offer a number of different gestures that you can try out to see if one or two of them feel supportive and comforting for you that you could use. Okay. Okay. So the first one is just putting your two hands together and rubbing your two hands and seeing how this feels. You might notice a little bit of warmth. Sometimes people like closing their eyes when they do this because it allows them to get a little bit more in touch with what they're feeling. So feel free to do that if you'd like. And maybe crossing your arms, stroking your upper arms. Noticing how that feels. Maybe giving yourself a little hug. Maybe putting one hand on your forehead and one hand on the back of your neck. And seeing how this feels for you. Maybe just stroking one cheek. Or you can try cradling your face in your hands and seeing if that feels comforting, supportive. Try putting just one hand over your heart. And just noticing that gentle pressure of your hand on your heart. Maybe two hands on your heart. Noticing what this feels like. I really like this one. It just feels like I'm protecting my heart. Just feels comforting for me. Sometimes I do this in the middle of the night if I can't sleep. Maybe just making some small circles over your heart with your hand. Or just holding one hand in the other hand in your lap, and you can gently maybe stroke one hand with the other hand. And then the last one is just making a fist with one hand, putting it over your heart, and putting the other hand on top of it. And just notice what this feels like. Often people feel like this is a gesture of strength or courage. Okay, so if your eyes have been closed, you can open your eyes. And hopefully you found one or two gestures that feel comforting and feel supportive for you that you can use when you start to feel a little bit of stress coming up or anxiety, or you can go right into this particular gesture and just bring your attention on the way it feels and be a little bit comforting or supportive for you. Okay, I'm going to share my slides again. Okay, so the next practice that I'm going to do is called Self-Compassion Break. And it brings together the three different parts of self-compassion: mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. But before I start, I wanted to bring your attention to this image, which I love, because for me, what this image says is that when things are dark, when things are hard, when things are challenging, there's still hope. There's still light. There's still something there. Sometimes it's almost completely obscured. It's really hard to see, but it's still there, despite the fact that it's obscured. Okay, so for this practice, what I would like you to do is um, think of something challenging that you're dealing with in your life right now. Um, and you probably want to not go to the most difficult thing, but something that's around a 3 or a 4 on a scale from 1 to 10. Um, and if it's easier for you to do this with your eyes closed, feel free to close your eyes. Get a good image of the situation in your life. Who is there? Who does it involve? And now saying to yourself, this is a moment of struggle. This is a moment of struggle. Or maybe the words, this is hard right now. Or maybe this is really, really hard. Whatever words feel right for you. And this is the mindfulness piece. So this is acknowledging what's right here, right now. This is a moment of challenge for sure. And then the second part of this practice is the common humanity piece, which is saying to yourself, struggle is part of life. This is part of life. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me or I've done something wrong. This is what it's like to be human. This feeling of whatever it is, frustration, anger, hurt, whatever. Struggle is part of life. And now, if you found a comforting gesture, you can use your comforting gesture, maybe hands on your heart or on your cheeks. And moving to the third step, which is saying, so may I be kind to myself in this moment of struggle. May I give myself what I need. This is the self-kindness piece. And if you can't think of what words to say to yourself, what kind words to say to yourself, think of what you might say to a good friend who is going through something similar. What would you say to them? And can you say those words to yourself? So maybe something like, you'll get through this, you're strong, You can do this. Think about what you'd say to them and saying those supportive words to yourself. Okay, so this is the self-compassion break. Um, I stretched it out in doing this so that you can see the three separate parts, but you can do this in quickly in 10 seconds and or 5 seconds, just saying, noticing that, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling upset, just that, oh, this is a moment of struggle. Yeah, struggle's part of life, and may I be kind to myself right now. May I just say some kind words to myself? May I do something for myself, even if it's going for a walk, listening to a piece of music, whatever, making yourself a cup of tea, having a conversation with a friend, doing something kind for yourself, because it's hard, because it's hard. Okay, so that just brings us to some resources that I wanted to share, where you can learn more. So one website is selfcompassion.org website. This is a website of Kristen Neff, who is the pioneer who defined and operationalized self-compassion. In the last couple of years, she's developed a self-compassion community, which for some small amount of money, you can join and you have access to a lot of different tools, including introductory self-compassion workshops, which are free, conversations with experts in the field, sessions that she holds where you can ask her any questions. She also has a lot available that is free and available without joining her community, just a lot of resources on that site. So I would highly recommend going there. There's also my website, which is mostly geared for teens. And these are some books. My books are across the top, but the book that I would suggest that you start with would be this one, the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook, which takes you through the 8-week self-compassion program, which was developed by Kristen Neff and her colleague, Chris Germer. Well, thanks so much. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that informative session, Dr. Bluth. I think it's so important for all of us to remember that negative self-talk is not healthy and that we should all practice being a little bit kinder to ourselves. I know I'm going to be working on that as I go forward. And thank you also to Shelley Giuliano and everyone at GIBA for their ongoing support of the challenge and of FIA and FEDS. I hope that you all enjoyed today's session, and I hope that you'll join us again next week for a guided yoga session that you can do right from your office chair. Have a great week.